Welcome to the Rebellion Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Staker. This is episode 51. Dang, I can't believe... Oh, my wife's calling me. Hold on. I got to answer this. Hold on. And we're back. Okay, if you listened to my last episode, which it was the 50th episode of the Rebellion Podcast, and in honor of so, I did a player spotlight on Marcus Banks. And I really enjoyed making that episode. So if you listen to that episode, I appreciate your support. You know, for some reason, I published that episode before proof listening to it. So basically proofreading except listening. And which obviously I always do that just to make sure it sounds good before I go live. For some reason, that time I didn't. I just trusted that everything was fine. And then I went back and listened to it after everything was already published and promoted and all that. And there was like long pauses at one point, at like 3 different times during that podcast, which is not supposed to do that. There's supposed to be a feature that eliminates long pauses. So yeah, so that taught me to make sure I listen to all of these before going live. Okay, so, but yes, thank you again for those who listened to that episode. Banks is definitely a legend, not just for the UNLV family, just for me personally, without question. Okay, so today's episode, a couple main topics going to go over. I'm going to talk about Dan Mullen's recruiting and how excited I am for football season. 117 more days till football season. And, you know, we lost some guys because they were poached by our former coach and some other guys who were poached. And I guess that's just the reality we're in these days. People they can't just play fair, play by the rules. They got to, be shady like that, but that's okay. We at UNLV don't play those games, and we went out and replaced those guys with some players that are perhaps even better, and I'm ecstatic for it. Football season can't get here soon enough. So I've been kind of mainly focusing on basketball in the past month or so. I mean, that's because, the season ended, we got a new coach, we got all these new players, there was a lot to talk about, but I'm excited to talk a little bit about football today and just how pumped up I am and ready for this season that we're about to play in a few months. Starting with Sam Houston State, okay, another big road game to start the season, just like we did last season with Houston. That's a very good program, so hopefully we come ready to go. So first of all, before I get into Dan Mullen and UNLV football, there's a subject I wanted to talk about. So I am 6'7", 6 feet 7 inches tall. Well, I'm, if you want to get technical, I'm 6'6.5" barefoot, but I'm not going to tell people I'm 6'6.5" barefoot. I'm going to round up. Usually you round up when you're a guy, right? When you're a girl, you round down. So like my wife is 5'4.5", and she tells everyone she's 5'4", or she'll say 5'4.5", but so yeah, I 6'7", and by being 6'7" and being really tall, there's a lot of pros and cons in life to that. Now, I will start off by saying I wouldn't trade my height for anything. I love being tall. I do. I would say there was times in my life where I didn't want to be tall. Maybe when I was in high school and I was really skinny and lacked confidence, and I was just kind of just super tall, shy, awkward guy walking around, and people stared at me and made little jokes, and I was sensitive. And yeah, those days are in the past. I actually embrace being tall now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what life is like as a tall person. So first of all, I'll start with the pros, and then I'll get into the cons. The first advantage of being a tall person is, I'm not going to lie, it helped me with dating. I'm not saying all women like tall guys, but generally speaking, women tend to gravitate towards tall men. And it definitely helped me when I was single, and whether it was when I tried online dating, which online dating was a nightmare. I don't recommend it. But for some people, I mean, that really could be what's best for you, right? If you're in a situation where you can't go out and meet people, you can't go to the bars, you don't have like a lot of friends or coworkers to set you up with people, whatever the case may be, then online dating's for you. For me, though, it was just not a fun experience. However, girls could see my height on my dating profile, and they would message me about that, like, "Wow, you're so tall." And or if I was in the bars or in the club, I never even really went to clubs, but I would go to day clubs every now and then, like the pool and like the beach clubs. Those are fun. And a lot of times that was like the icebreaker. Like girls would come up to me like, "Oh my gosh, you're so tall. How tall are you?" And it kind of gave us that little, and I'd be like, "Guess," just my little playful trying to flirt, but even though I'm bad at it. Uh, so yeah, it definitely helped me in the dating world for sure. And then my next pro I have is I actually learned this from my brother, and he's totally right. When you're muscular, it looks way better on a tall person than a short person. I don't know why, it just does. When you see a short, really muscular guy, for some reason it makes them just look shorter. And then also people tend to be like, huh, you're just covering up the fact that you're short by getting lots of muscles, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. I would 100% do the same thing if I was short. If I was short, I would be like a bodybuilder. So I'm not hating on that whatsoever. But it does seem like it makes you shorter, and it does seem like people might be quicker to be like, huh, steroids, huh? Like, just making those little dumb comments. But when you're tall, you look like a superhero when you're muscular. I remember Kaspar's Kambala. That dude was jacked, bro. Like he looked like Kane. Like if Kane was a basketball player, that was him. He was 6'9", and then like 280, like 8% body fat, just shredded. Remember seeing that dude in person thinking, I want to look like him. Like that's what I want to look like. He was just so intimidating, right? So being tall and having muscles is just an awesome combination. You look great in clothes if you can find the right clothes. And a lot of dudes look up to you too. I'm not gonna lie. When I was like going out a lot and I was tall and I was hitting the gym, so I was muscular, I got approached by way more dudes than I did girls. It's like, oh my dude, where do you lift? Like, oh, how much do you weigh? Like, or what do you bench press? Yeah, I got approached by way more dudes than I did girls, and that's the reality of a lot of guys who are overweight or they're skinny and they get into the gym for the first time and they want to put on muscle and they get like a nice looking physique for the first time in their life. The expectation is that they're going to start getting a lot of attention from women, but you actually get a lot more attention from men. And that's the reality of it. I remember, I think I'm sharing way too much right now. Oh well, screw it. I remember like I just went through my phase where I was so into bodybuilding and like muscle physique and doing whatever I can to get ripped, and there was this couple walking down the street when I was driving with my buddy. My buddy was into the same thing as me, like the bodybuilding stuff. This couple's walking down the street, and this guy had his shirt off, and he was like ripped, but his girlfriend was in a bikini and was like really good looking, and we both found ourselves looking at the guy and not the girl because we were like, dang, like where does he work out at? Like I gotta ask him for advice. Like so we were like, we just thought that was hilarious that we were looking at the guy and not the girl. But yeah, anyone who has been into weightlifting or been super into like trying to get jacked, they know what I mean. So yeah, that was a pro for being tall. Another thing is it helped me be better at basketball, of course. Basketball players are tall. That's no shocker there. Is height everything in basketball? No, but it's pretty damn important. So if I wasn't 6'7", I never would have made it to Division I never would have made it to the college level. It just wouldn't have been there for me, right? I didn't have guard skills as much as I wish I did, or I thought I did at one point. I was a post player, so height obviously helped, and that's what I tell people. They're like, "Do you like being tall?" I'm like, "Well, it paid for my college," and that's the truth. Being a basketball player and being on scholarship got me to leave college debt free, and that was a massive advantage in life to not have any debt and then have a degree to show for it. So, however, one of the things that sucks when you're tall and you're a basketball player and you go against shorter basketball players. And not the true hoopers. True hoopers don't make excuses. They just ball. They don't care. But these idiots that you play with, like pickup ball against, or in the adult leagues, or at the YMCA, whatever, you get these idiots that are like, man, if I was your height, I'd be in the NBA. No, you wouldn't. You would not be in the NBA. You have like a 21-inch vertical. You don't shoot as good as you think you shoot. You have not even a fraction of enough athleticism to even be Division I athlete, let alone in the NBA. And despite all of that, even if you had all those things, you don't have the work ethic to make it to that level. And so that's one of the, crappy parts about being tall is you got to deal with like jealous short people and their idiotic comments. I remember when I was lifting weights in college, my freshman year, and there was this guy in there who was like 5'8", and he comes up to me and he's like, man, I could bench the same amount as you, and look how much bigger you are than me. I'm like, are you serious right now? And he's like, what? It's true. Look how big you are, and I could bench the same amount as you, man. That's embarrassing for you. He really said this to me. I was like, you moron. Use common sense. I'm tall and I have tall arms, so I have to push the bar up a lot further than you do. Like, just use those few brain cells you have and actually like think things through before you talk. Obviously that stuck with me to this day. But yeah, it's like, come on, like, don't be stupid, right? It's not, lifting weights is not easier for you when you're tall. Like, there's certain exercises that help, but bench press is not one of them. Talked a lot about weightlifting in this episode. I had no intention of doing that. Okay, so those are kind of the pros of being tall. Cons, let's talk about the cons. Well, it's a fact that tall people, generally speaking, have more health issues, and that sucks to say. Tall people's hearts struggle and strain in order to pump blood throughout their elongated bodies, so their hearts just have to work harder, especially if you're tall and heavy. At one point, I was 300 pounds. Okay, I was buff, but I was like chubby too, because I was just bulking, doing like dirty bulks. So I was a massive, massive dude, 6'7", 300 pounds, and people like that do not live long. It's big dog syndrome, right? So, I would joke around, telling people, like, when they ask me about being tall, I'm like, the bad part is I have a shorter life expectancy, and I would just kind of joke around, but it's actually kind of true. So just for health's sake, I can't be 300 pounds. I just can't be. So yeah, that's unfortunately, that's a reality of being tall. Also, tall people have more stress on their joints. And this is another thing short people got to think about. There's a lot of short people that walk around in life like depressed that they're short. I'm telling you, in the long run, you're going to be happy. You're going to be happy because you're going to have so much less health issues. And you're going to be so much more durable when you're older than a tall person is. Or at the very least, tall people have to work 5 times harder to be healthy and not have joint issues when they're old than you do. So if you are a short person listening to this, you got to think of that, all right? Think of the long run. Okay, so what other cons do I have? Well, okay, probably the biggest cons would be comments from people. Okay, if you're listening to this and you've ever approached a tall person and said anything about their height whatsoever, any comment, question, gestural look, anything, or that thing where you go and you stand on your tippy toes, standing side by side to a tall person because you think it's funny to try and be as tall as them. I need you to hear me. Stop. Don't do it. If your goal is to annoy the hell out of them, by all means, do it. If that's what you want to do, which I don't know why you would want to do that. I don't know why you'd want to be that person. Do not say anything about their height unless you do it in a very friendly way, or you acknowledge the fact that they have to hear these comments all day, every day in their entire life. Just don't say anything, because they really appreciate it when I feel like it's almost like when you go up to a really pretty girl and you say like, wow, you're beautiful. A very attractive woman's going to be like, thanks. Because you're just making a judgment based off of exterior, right? Like, it has nothing to do with who they are as a person, who they are on the inside. They have to hear those comments all the time, so it doesn't mean much to them, okay? They might appreciate it because it's nice, but if that's your way of trying to flirt with them, it's a really bad idea, okay? So it's similar in the sense of like when you go up to a tall person and say like, dang, man, you're tall, or like, whoa, you're tall. It's really, really annoying, and it makes you look dumb. I'll be honest, it makes you look dumb because it's called blurting. When you blurt something out, you're saying the first thing that pops in your brain without actually thinking about it, okay? And this is something that tall people have to deal with. It would be extremely rude if I went up to a short person and said, like, "Whoa, why are you so short?" People would look at me like, "Dang, you jerk. Like, who says that? What's wrong with you?" But it's perfectly acceptable to go up to a tall person and say, like, "Wow, you're tall." So don't be that person. Don't. And like, another one of the most common things is like, if you ever have to take pictures, like group pictures, whether it's like it's like a thing for work or for I don't know, a team you're on, or anything that you have to take, a family photo, whatever the case may be, there's always that guy who, hey, why do you have to have Ryan next to me? Like, ha ha ha, look how short you make me feel. And then, they do this thing where they stand on their tippy toes and just don't say anything. You know how I knew, like, my family that I married into, the reason I knew that, like, not the only reason, it's just one reason that I was like, this is the right family to marry into. These people are my people, right? None of them said anything about my height when I met them. Do you know how rare that is? Because I met them like all at once, and then some of them I met at different times, and they didn't say anything about my height. Not like, "Whoa, you're a giant," or like, "Dang, whoa, how tall are you?" Like, nothing. They just talk to me like I'm a person. Like, "Hi, I'm Dave. Nice to meet you." Or like, "How long have you been a Rebel fan?" Or like, "Are you from Vegas?" Like, normal conversation. Not blurting out comments about my height. Okay? So I have a buddy who's 6'9". I talked about him on this podcast before. I love hanging out with him because I get to feel normal. Side note, I was in a bachelor party once. Oh, my brother's bachelor party. My brother's 6'8". Again, I'm 6'7". Everyone in his bachelor party were all athletes, and they were all volleyball players. So I'm talking about 8 or 9 guys that were all between 6'5" and 6'9". I kid you not. Kind of like a whole basketball team. And we were just going bar hopping with this group of tall guys. And one time we were, at the time we thought it was hilarious, but looking back at it, it was like obnoxious. But we were in the bar dancing, far gone. We've had way too many drinks at this point. And one of the security guards, he's one of those guys that, like, they have a short man's complex, so they have to act tough. They have to, like, show you that they're not intimidated by you, rather than just being friendly, just being a nice, friendly guy. They have to, like, stick their chest out and act like they're tough. He was one of those guys. And my brother came up with the idea of, like, let's all go rub the bald security guy's head. And so we were thinking nothing of it because we were doing it kind of like in a having fun with him type of way. Like, that was like, keep in mind, we're young idiots. We're all like 23, 24, 25. And so we go up to the security guard and we start rubbing his head, and we all start going, "Yeah," like jumping around, like almost like your buddy who just scored, or your buddy just hit a home run and you're like celebrating with him. It was kind of like that type of energy, which we thought we were just having fun. And no, that was a bad idea, because that guy was very hurt because he felt like all these giant people are surrounding him and touching his head. He didn't like that. So he actually had to get on his little mic and call security over. And they had to gather like a whole army of security guards to escort us out of the bar. All they had to do was ask us to leave. But they were, because we were drunk and we were, kind of being obnoxious. I think they were afraid that we would cause a scene, but we didn't. We just left. But anyways, that was a little side story. But yeah, so I have a buddy who's 6'9", and I asked him, "What do you say to people when they ask you, why are you so tall?" Because that's the most annoying question in the freaking world. Like, why are you so tall? Why? Why do people think that they're the first person to ask that? Like, stop. Like, it's like, why are you so tall? Like, stop. Obviously, it's because we have tall parents. It's genetics. And he says the same thing as me. He's like, it just depends on if they're friendly about it or not. If they're not, if they just like obnoxious about it, like, dude, why are you so tall? It's like a genetics dummy. That's what he said. He says. So anyone who's listening to this, please don't go up to a tall person and say, "Why are you so tall?" It's really stupid. It's like really, really stupid. Now, if you want to ask a tall guy how tall they are because you're genuinely curious, it's totally fine. Okay, I happily answer that question all the time. I'm not annoyed by it. I don't mind whatsoever. Okay, it's just when you're obnoxious about it. And don't ever, ever give tall people annoying nicknames like Sasquatch or Shrek or Giant. Don't do it. It's disrespectful and it's super annoying. Now, if you want to give them a nickname that makes them look cool, that's different, right? When I went from skinny to putting on a lot of muscle, I was called Brock Lesnar. I was called Brian Urlacher, Captain America. These are nicknames I will take all day long. Please call me that. It's great for my confidence, right? So, okay. Last thing I'll say about a con of being tall, and I apologize for that rant. I talked way too long on on why clearly I don't like people commenting on my height. I think that I made that quite apparent. But the last thing I'll say is whenever it's so hard to find clothes that fit us, right? Like shoes tend to only go up to 13. I wear size 15. Shirts, they might fit fine around like the shoulder arm area, but they're not long enough. Pants, you get ones that are long enough, but they're too tight, or you get ones that are loose enough, but they're not long enough. Buying clothes is a nightmare. So, okay, now to move on to today's main topic, let's talk about Dan Mullen. And first of all, I want to start off by saying what a fantastic past 4 or 5 months it's been if you're a UNLV sports fan with recruiting. Man, it is such a dopamine hit when you get this new news on Twitter about a big-time recruit. And then you get to go learn about them more, read about them, look at their stats, watch tape on them. And football, like basketball has been awesome because we brought in 9 players. So I got to have that experience and that feeling 9 separate times. And it's usually not the case, right? Usually only bring in 4 or 5 new players. And we brought in a whole new roster, which is crazy. But football, there's so many more players on the team that you get to have that same feeling so many more times. And clearly I'm a big nerd when it comes to this. And recruiting is always my favorite time of the year because the seasons tend to not go well. Well, for UNLV basketball, that is. UNLV football obviously had back-to-back really good seasons. But even when the seasons are going well, though, I stress so much and I have anxiety over the games. I need to figure that out. Like I talked to my therapist about like why I can't relax when it comes to sports. And I haven't been able to figure out that yet. So, okay. Like I said at the beginning of this episode and what I titled this episode, 117 more days till football season. So Dan Mullen, let's talk about his recruiting. You know, he just brought in a former 5-star player who was Justin Flo, who was the number 1 linebacker in the country coming out of high school. And that sparked a lot of conversation about, you know, are these players actually that good, or are we just getting guys that couldn't cut it at the big schools, you know, and now they have to resort to coming down to our school and they're not that good. It's yes and no. Okay. So I'm going to get into that though. Regardless though, we should be excited. We should definitely be excited. So Dan has the number 1 class in the Mountain West Conference for the 2026 recruiting class and 50th overall in the country. If I'm not mistaken, that's the best recruiting class we've ever had at UNLV. And don't expect that to not be the norm moving forward, especially with the Mountain West kind of not being as good now since those teams are leaving. There's a lot of rumors that we still might join the Pac-12, the new Pac, and we still might join other conferences eventually. But as far as comparing to the Mountain West, we're going to be in a league of our own starting next season, without Boise in the conference anymore. That's for sure. So, yeah, number 1 in the Mountain West for 2026, 50 overall. And then for Dan Mullen's transfers, we brought in 17 transfers who were 4 or 5-star recruit out of high school. including 24 transfers from Power 4 programs. I would love to know how that compares to every other team in the conference. I got to think that's the most by far. It's got to be, right? And so people look at this and when I say people, I'm talking about the negative people, like the trolls in the comments, the ones that have to always rain on your parade and they don't want to see anyone happy or excited and be like, these guys aren't good. Like if they were good, they would have stayed at their previous school and not came to UNLV. Okay, to the morons who have that opinion, you have to understand a couple different things. First of all, when you're at those big schools, you are competing with very talented players at every position, and there's a lot of them. There's a ton of competition. Just because you transfer doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It means you only have 4 years of eligibility. If you stick at this school, you're running the risk of losing out on a starting job or losing out on playing time, not being in as many snaps, right, in a game, versus you can go to this school who may not be at that high of a level, but it's still a really good program. It's still a program that's going to send players to the NFL. And now you have a better opportunity to play more. You can play more. You can start. There's more exposure. If your number one goal is to make it to the NFL, you can go potentially be a star there. Look at Jackson Woodard, one of the best linebackers in college football. Okay. He wasn't playing that much in Power 4. That is a perfect example right there. So just because you transferred does not mean you're not a really good player. Now, as far as these players that have all these stars next to their name, what it means is we have players that are very talented. Maybe they haven't reached their full potential yet, but all it takes is you go to a new program under a new coaching staff, new philosophies, you get that fresh start, and now all of a sudden you could blossom, okay? And that's what Dan Mullen has done such an amazing job of bringing in guys that have such a high ceiling, guys with a lot of talent. I talked about this before on this podcast. This is why stars matter, okay? Stars matter because it means you were evaluated by a lot of different recruiting analysts, and you were given those stars for a reason. You were very athletic. You're skilled. You have certain attributes that explain why you had those stars, and it's because of your talent level. You have a lot of talent. So we're bringing in a lot of players that transferred to UNLV that could have transferred to other power conference schools. Keep in mind, we're getting players from the top programs. We're getting players from Alabama, and we're getting players from Oregon, and some of the top programs in college football, LSU, Arkansas, top programs. These guys could have gone to other power conference schools easily, no problem. Okay, Georgia. Okay, we're bringing in guys from all of the top programs, but they chose to go to UNLV because we have so many great things going for us here. Okay, so that in itself is a reason why you have to understand why we're getting these players and why it doesn't mean that they're not good. Another reason is NIL. Okay, Dan Mullen has to do whatever he can with a limited NIL budget. We do not have Ohio State's budget. We don't have a $20 million roster, okay? That's not the case and probably realistically never will be the case. Okay, so Dan has to be as efficient as he can by getting the best players he can with the limited amount of money. And you do that by getting guys who have high ceilings, okay? Maybe they just have not reached that ceiling yet. They haven't reached that potential. And he could not have done a better job with that. So we have a roster that is as talented as any, not as any, but has the talent of a Power 4 roster, okay? Now, what this does is it gives us an opportunity to get some players to become confident and reach their full potential. And it's so exciting because we could be extremely, extremely good next year. So there's a tweet I read that got me pretty excited and I wanted to read it. So this is the tweet of the day. Like, guys like Mullen and Pastner are built for recruiting in today's college sports world. This isn't 5, 10, 15 years ago. It's a whole different animal nowadays. Okay? So while other coaches complain about the new college football the way it is now, how you spend years recruiting a player just for him to go somewhere else just because of they offered more money. Dan Mullen and Josh Pastner embrace it. They actually fit perfectly with this type of recruiting. This type of recruiting, this is something I didn't think of, because you have coaches that recruit in their own way. Some coaches are not natural salesmen, right? So the way they recruit is by showing up to all of your high school games, by showing up to all of your AAU games, by constantly messaging you and giving you calls and letting you, calling your mom on her birthday, like stuff like that. And they have to put in the work because they don't naturally have that salesman personality. Dan Mullen and Josh Pastner do. They are natural salesmen, so they are tailor-made for this style of recruiting. Josh has even said this is a far more efficient way of recruiting because you meet with the players, you say, this is what we have to offer, take it or leave it, move on to the next one, okay? And what it does is now you don't have to worry about recruiting a player for months or even years just for them to choose another school. Now you can recruit a player for a week or two at the most and move on to the next one. We have the perfect coaches for this style of recruiting, okay? Also, both these coaches took time off after their previous job where they got into football, they were an analyst on TV. They got to see from the sidelines, from a distance, the new landscape, how everything operates, the new rules, and how the new trends in college sports. And they got to sit back, take mental notes, and figure out what will work, okay? And that's what they've done. That's why they were both so fired up and excited to get back into coaching. Getting coaches that have sat out for a couple years that really, really wanted to get back into coaching, and now they're excited for the opportunity. Man, Eric Harper, you are UNLV Person of the Year in my opinion, because you really, really saved this university when it comes to sports. And how a bigger school has not come along and snatched you up and offered you more money, I don't know. Okay, so this podcast is running a lot longer than I wanted to. My apologies on that. I am going to go ahead and move on and not spend a lot of time on these last two things. So first of all, Rob Whaley commits to Kent State and Brooklyn hits to Montana. Again, both of these players made really good decisions, in my opinion, okay? I'm proud of the former Rebels in the sense of where they chose to go, because they didn't go to a school that has a lot of talent and a lot of competition for playing time where they might sit the bench. They all went to programs that are good programs, that they should start there, and it's a great opportunity for them, okay? Rob Whaley is going to go be the man at Kent State, okay? I know a lot of Rebel fans wanted him back. I get it. I was very high on him. I was extremely high on him prior to last season, and ended up not going well as he only played 2 games and then allegedly quit after that. But he would not have started on this team. Okay, he's not better than Kamani Hamilton, not by a long shot. He's not better than Dembele. So I don't know where those minutes would have been for him at UNLV. I mean, best case scenario, he would have got about 15 to 20 minutes a game off the bench. Best case scenario. So he made the right decision to leave because he's going to be, maybe a star player at Kent State, and I wish him nothing but the best. Brooklyn Hicks to Montana, same thing. Montana fans, if you're listening to this, I know they're not, but if you're listening to this, Montana fans, you're getting a good player, okay? Brooklyn Hicks is just shooting percentages away from being a star, okay? Because he has those things you can't teach. He's athletic, he has a very high motor, and he has a work ethic, okay? Those are things you cannot teach, and he has those. So if he gets his shooting percentages up, his field goal percentage up, his three-point percentage up to about 35, his free throw percentage up to about 70-ish, 75-ish, you're going to have a star player on your hands. Okay, last thing I want to talk about for Running Rebel basketball, with the last roster spot, I would like to see – actually, I don't know that they have one spot left. I know we're recruiting more players because it shows up on my Twitter feed of like players that are receiving interest from UNLV. So I know we're bringing in at least one more player, which is so exciting. I can't wait. especially with the way this is recruiting has been going. And what I think, to me, what we need the most at this point is a center. I think every other position we're pretty stacked at. I think we need another center to battle Emmanuel Steffen for that starting job. And it could be a center who's kind of opposite of Emmanuel Steffen, who's like maybe not as athletic, but he's really skilled and can shoot the ball. Or it can be another defensive, shot blocking, rebounding center. You know, let those two battle it out alongside Dembele to try and, you know, get that starting front court position. So yeah, that's why I would like to see the Rebels bring in, you know, a 7-footer who is experienced, can defend, can rebound. We've had such poor rebounding teams over the past several years. I just go get a guy that can grab boards. That's really what I want right now. Okay, Rebel fans, thank you for listening. This was fun. Going to release another episode soon, and we will talk soon. Bye.